The person who is hosting this and organizing and taking maximum effort is Professor Varaprasad, head of the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, and Professor Srinath Sharma. So I have to say a lot more thanks to these two people, because they have effortlessly for the last 3-4 days doing the same work. And I would like to introduce, or I have to say thanks to the chairman, Penchalaya Garu, and director of the institute, Mohan Garu, and the Department of Mechanical Engineering head, Professor Stalin. So without him, we cannot start this. And finally, I have to introduce my one of colleagues earlier and close friend of me, Professor S. Narasimha Rao, who is the resource person of today's workshop. Let me give a brief introduction about Professor S. Narasimha Rao. So Professor S. Narasimha Rao is basically from Andhra Pradesh, from Nellore district, and native of Kavali town. He has obtained his BTech Mechanical Engineering from SP University College of Engineering, Tirupati, and MTech from specialization of fashion design. After that, he joined one of the private engineering colleges as a assistant professor. His
Sir, voice రావట్లేదు. Check it.
Hello, voice రావట్లేదండి. Check చేయండి.
Sorry. At present, he is doing research in detection of early stage of breast cancer by means of mechanical methods without exposing the breast to the radiation, waves, magnetic and electric fields. So this is one of the most important topics, because as you know, without exposing to the radiation, waves, magnetic fields is tough job. As one more feather of his resume is, recently he has participated in INCOM conference organized by IISc Bangalore on modeling of tissue plantomes related to breast cancer, and he got good appreciation from international gathering. There was a huge appreciation and response. So with this, I hope you can enjoy today's workshop on linear homogeneous materials. Thank you. Now I request Professor S. Narasimha Rao to deliver the message.
Yes, sir. It's a thank you and it's a pleasure to join you back once again. Hi, guys. I hope you all are doing good and safe. And welcome to the what we call a seminar over here. In general, designed the structure of the seminar such a way that those who are really wanted to what we call a model, choose their research topic as a mathematical modeling of materials. For them, it's a brief introduction. Suppose that means if at all you are already done the computer mechanics course, sorry, you may be get bored of this, and anyhow you not appreciate that already you are done the computer mechanics. My aim, I had kept aim what we call at the basic, and let me share my yeah. Yeah, fine, sir. You know, actually, yes, sir, fine. Actually, the task of this work, we need to understand a basic mathematical modeling. I mean, why we have to understand the mathematical modeling? That's the first question to be answered. Of course, up to now we have been understand that whatever the materials we are in, in last century, most probably steel has been dominant. Steel has been dominant entire mechanical world. There we all know that only in this what we call material only is enough for defining the we all know that material parameters is very essential. I mean, material parameters here ratio. Understanding this is very important. Now, what happens is in newer engineering, as the material polymer technology is developing very rapidly, and the material, what we call, you name the properties, engineers are engineers are ready to make a fabricated. It's a huge change. In this situation, in this generation, you don't have, you should not restrict yourself. You have to explore yourself in modeling the material. Unless you don't understand the concept of modeling or concept of understanding the material parameters, it will be very difficult for us to use those particular materials for the design purpose. That is the primary aim of this course. Only thing is, I'm giving a little bit of glimpse of modeling, and directly I'm taking you to the what we call modeling code. In between, whatever the small information required to fill the bridge, I will give that. I will try to give that bridge. Okay. Most of before proceeding, let me tell what the scope of this. Let me tell. If you see, as I said, polymer technology is evolving like anything. Now you see, people are what we call people can develop whatever the material you want it to be, whatever the model, whatever the property you want it to be. People are ready to develop. For example, wherever deformation, there all you can apply this modeling theory. No matter how the deformation is. Sometimes if I take the electroelastomers, previously we have known that materials, if you give electricity to the material used to expand, or if you give the deformation, you used to get electricity. They are natural existence, and if you take the electroelastomers, where you can give the electricity to the material, and expansion will take place. And if you take the expansion, field will develop. Similarly to the magnetic field also. These materials can be used as a sensors, and in the robot technology as a muscles. Up to now, we have been used robot technology. In the robots, we have been used drives to lift or for the motion. if at all if at all people are put concentration and develop the electroelastomer, even they act as a muzzle. Only thing is you give the voltage difference. Material will lift because of the compression. Material lift. That is the advance in the modeling. Suppose if you don't have the model basic modeling, so it's very difficult to understand the materials. And if it comes to the biomedical engineering, come on now. Modeling is taking its own place in biomedical engineering. Let me give one small example where my professor is, one of my professor is doing that. In our teeth, in the plantation, in the teeth plantation, initially people used to screw it using the bolt. Internally, one bone will be there where the Young's models of that material is very critical. And people capable of fabricating that material, modeling of that is taking place. That much technology has been grown. No matter all the organs in the, all the human organs can fabricate, can what we call can fabricate almost all. For example, what we are doing in my lab is we are developing. We wanted to take a material, what we call the task is we wanted to diagnose the breast cancer at its initial stage. So what happens here is we cannot conduct experiments on develop a material which can which can mimic the properties of breast. So that's what the task is. Here the material manufacturing material is very important. Fabric material is also secondary. Mimicking the material exactly to the what we call breast is the issue. Mimicking the properties is very issue. And unless if you don't have the mathematical modeling, unless you don't have the techniques to figure out the properties of that, it's going to be very difficult. So that's why you need to understand the mathematical properties. Now I'm giving the what we call the toughest is neuroplasticity. People would have been under what know about this. What is the meaning of neuroplasticity? People, generally people said that, it was said that, brain research said that our learning or memory depends on the chemical or mechanical interaction of the neurons. How it is going to be is that, suppose, you see, actually it has been said that if you train yourself, suppose if I take a flute and if I play, so that means we are training our mind. So short memory will depends on chemical interaction. The short memory will depends on the chemical interaction of the two neurons generally. And actually the long memory depends on the structural change of these neurons. And imagine billions of the neurons over there. People has been nowadays, I read one article that scholars, researchers are capable of trace 200 neurons, whereas billions of neurons, other people are able to trace 200 neurons. Suppose, if at all we have a model, it's no matter what kind of force it's taking place. Here the force may not be mechanical force. Here the force may be a chemical force or some kind of force. You have to be understand what exactly is happening. And then in 200 years, understand that we may reach to the Mars. Now we have been reached. Maybe in maybe from here 50 years after 50 years after when the capabilities of computer rises, people can model this very just like very simply. So here what I'm going to say is that the structure is changes. So if at all we are capable of modeling this structure, immediately we can define how a man thinks, how a memory is, how we see so many advantages over there. Of course, we never advantage to find out a right thing. That's how the modeling is what we call dominating. We mechanical engineers nowadays, we are no more working with the bolts and nuts. That trend is changed. Now we are entirely entering into the medical domain. And if you invest your time properly, take from me, you can reach a good stance. But only thing is, enthu must be there, and proper atmosphere must be there. Yeah, with this, I would like to start my what we call thing. The total outcomes, what I mean to we get also, let me me recall some basic strength of materials so that have that glimpse of that. And the preliminaries of continuum mechanics. I'm not going to the in-depth of the continuum mechanics, but only thing is I will give the information, necessary information, what is required for the modeling, and the introduction to the nonlinear, what is the nonlinear elastic material, where it is going to be, how to model. The major task in entire seminar is going to be how we have to model, and what are the formulas to be. Of course, at the end of the day, people are depends on the formulas. What are the formulas required to be, and how the what are the elementary precautions we have to take while modeling. Those are all I'm going to do. And I will use this a little bit code for modeling. Code is I will give the code. Modeling platform you can take in any platform. Either you can take a model in MATLAB or what we call LSDynamo in console. Whatever the programming language you are good, you can use that program. But code is going to be same. This is my code. It is not like that you cannot use in your code. I had given some what we call initial statement, and I will give the literature survey, a small glimpse of how to do the literature. Most of us when at our graduation level, BTech level, we have been not taught how to do literature survey. Of course, if you have done your PGs at the NITs or IIT level, that would have been entirely different criteria. We don't have to what we call, listen to this. You can do yourself. But here I would like to give a little bit literature survey. I guess these points are good enough for us to discuss for 1 hour. Yeah, fine. Yeah, let us recall a few basics so that we'll feel comfortable. So here I am taking a class of materials, not the material, not the entire material. I'm taking a class of materials and I'm giving those materials as a mechanical materials because we are using them for the mechanical purpose. I named them as the mechanical materials. And even in the mechanical materials also, there are variety of materials are there, ceramics, composites, so many things are there. I'm taking the relevant materials over here, which we require. Generally we know that materials, what we can take as the elastic material, plastic material. I don't want to define what is the meaning of plasticity and elasticity. As we are dealing with elasticity can be further into two which are relevant to us. It's most probably they can be classified into non-linear and linear elastic. Linear elastic, we are been living with the non-linear. Linear elastic by the time we got into our graduation. Non-linear elasticity, people would have, those who have done the machine design, they would have come across with the non-linear elastic materials when in the advanced mechanics materials. And in the non-linear also, we have very wide variety of things. These are all, remember, these materials are not going to be end up with this. There are several, behavior is going to be changed according to them. When the behavior changes according to that, we have to code, we have to write on our own formulas. It's no guarantee that whatever the formulas people have been derived, these formulas are going to be acceptable for all the materials. So we have to define a specific formula for a specific material, and based upon that particular properties, we have to develop. The major task over here is simply, let me give you a simple definition. Find out the basic mechanical properties of a given material. That's all. How we are going to do is we are going to understand. Okay. Now, before proceeding, don't laugh at me if I define the elasticity. Fine. Actually, the meaning of elasticity is any material giving a resistance for the applying load. For the response influence, instead of applying load, let me call it influence, because here applying load is no more mechanical load. Influence can be anything. It can be electrical, it can be mechanical, or it can be some electromagnetic, or even in our thinking. If I consider the plasticity, even it can be what we call, also can be a force. So here, instead of taking a force, I'm taking influence. So material should show the resistance to the influence, and when the influence is removed, material should come back to its original position. That was what we understand basic linear elasticity. It's very simple. the relation between the stress and strain must be linear, and we all know how to find out the material property for this. It's very simple. What we call very simple. While still we had been hunted us for the long time, right? So if it is a linear, find the slope of that line will give the Young's modulus. This is what we studied in our basic graduation. Graduation. Now, what I'm going to do is same thing. If at all we use a numerical method, how it is going to be? I'm going to take a linear problem so that it will be easy for us. Those formulas are all well known to us. I will take the linear elastic problem, and then I will explain, instead of finding our instead of finding in the slope manner, I will try to explain how it has to be, how numerical methods are going to be used to calculate Young's modulus or material properties. And same numerical method can be applicable for any modeling. Coding is going to be same, but the only thing is those formulas and applying those formulas and constraints are going to be the different. Fine, done. Yeah, as I said, what we call the task is to understand the hyperelastic material. As we saw in the as we know that elastic material means the relation between the stress and strain is going to be linear. So nowadays the materials have been developed such a way that the relation between the stress and strain are not going to be linear. For example, muzzle, this muzzle, and gum, chewing gum. You check, any material, unless if they are elastic, they are all behaving as a nonlinear materials. And in the nonlinear materials, we have considered the large deformation. For the small deformation is that even if you take this graph, even for the small deformation, their behavior is a linear. The behavior is a linear. So our task is to understand for the large deformations. When we consider the large deformations, this all depends on the author. So this depends upon that particular research, that particular scholar, how he is going to be defined. Most probably the standard way people is to define in the stretch ratio. Stretch ratio is nothing but what we call final length divided by original length. It's a ratio of the final. The length means length in the current situation. If I take the length as length in the current situation or over to initial length to the initial length, so it's nothing but final length by original length. That's how people used to take. And from here, and if I take the one more thing, and one more class of material is the viscoelastic material. This is very typical material, and people are putting, because all biomedical materials will fall under this category. So if at all you want to shift your concentration to the biomedical side, always you have to understand hyperelastic and viscoelastic material. Let me explain the viscoelastic material. And we have been understand that if the material, if you apply the influence, material will expand, and if you remove the influence, the material will come back to position. So we have been understanding linear elastic. And hyperelastic means if you apply load, it will expand, but the relation between the applying load and the influence is not uniform. It's not linear. That's what we have been understand for the linear hyperelastic. Now, suppose if we take the viscoelastic material, suppose I had given. So two ways we can define whether we can understand whether the material is the viscoelastic or hyperelastic. One is creep, another one is the stress relaxation. So let me go a little bit slowly. Creep means, suppose if I given a load here, if I mention here the stress means it is nothing but it's a load. Creep means if you give a load, and I had given a load and kept a constant for some time and reduce the load. I have to understand how the material behaves for this loading. In the creep, generally, viscoelastic means we have to understand based upon the time domain. So this is the time domain. I would like to study the response based upon the time. Whereas for the elastic or hyperelastic, you don't have to worry about the time. No matter how the time is, the material behavior is not going to be changed. But whereas the viscoelastic material, one more domain is going to be added, is the time. Time is very essential key factor over here to understand the viscous effect. For example, I will tell you after this. Suppose for this loading condition, how we have to understand the material elastic property means, we know the elastic property means, for if I give this particular load, particular strain will be there, corresponding strain will be there. And if I keep the load constant, corresponding strain will be constant for the elastic material. And if you remove the load, and strain also will be, it will come back to original position. This was a typical elastic material. And we know viscous, how the viscous fluids will be there. And no matter how you, I mean, whether you reduce the load or whether you, what we call, if you apply load, strain is going to be keeps on increases. That's what we understand as the viscous, general simple viscous fluids or viscous material. Once if you remove load, and a permanent deformation will take place over there. That's what the fluid behaves, right? And viscoelastic material means it falls in between the elastic and viscous. Then elastic means if you remove the load, it will come back to the original position. And if you don't remove the load, then it will remains, for the viscous fluid, and if you remove the load, it remains its original position. Viscoelastic material, what it do is, if you apply load, and if you remove means, if you apply load and if you constantly put the load means, for viscoelastic material, the strain will keeps on increase. This is the very, very important point for viscoelastic materials. If you make your load constant, the strain is going to be keeps on increases. And this is the important point. This is the important property. And if you remove the load, the what we call, strain will be reducing, and strain is not going to be entire strain is not going to be recovered. Certain permanent deformation will be there. And based upon this permanent deformation, further we can classify it as whether it is a viscoelastic fluid or viscoelastic solid. That depends on application what we want it to be. So here I'm taking as a viscoelastic solid because we are not dealing with the viscoelastic fluid, we are dealing with the viscoelastic solid. So for viscoelastic solid, this permanent deformation will be minimum. But only thing is it may take time. And people have been asking me, we were there, and I would like to recall one of incident in my classroom where my professor was taking the course on the viscoelastic material, and in the first class he had been asked us what is the example for the viscoelastic material. We had been given so many things, what we call rubber, tissue. We had been given so many examples, and he had given the example of the viscoelastic material is the Mount Everest. Oh my God, we got surprised. Mount Everest viscoelastic material. Come on, man, what he's saying? We have been what we call, scratching our head. Then he explained how a Mount Everest can be considered as a viscoelastic material. What is the viscoelastic material? The basic nature means when you apply load, when we keep the load, without applying load, the deformation must take place, right? Take the time scale. That's where the viscoelastic material is very important in terms of time scale. At what time scale we are looking at? Suppose 500 years back, how the mountain was. Up now, how the mountain is. Or 1,000 years back, how the mountain was. Now, how the mountain is. 1,000 years back, whatever the shape the mountain has now, that it is not containing the same shape. The shape has been changed. So that means in the long scale, even Earth is not the what we call solid. Even Earth also we have to consider as a viscoelastic material. In this scale, what scale we are defining is important. So that, of course, we are not defining in terms of a long scale. Our design must be, as we are dealing with the mechanical properties, our time scale must be a small time scales. That's all we have to consider. One more test is stress relaxation. So stress relaxation, if you give the strain input, input, then what happens? If you give some strain, and your stress is going to be increased. And if you keep that strain, suppose simple, if I give a strain, corresponding stress will be there. And if you keep the strain constant, how the elastic materials will behave? This is how the elastic material behave. If your strain is constant, your stress is also constant. How the viscoelastic material is going to be takes place means if you hold over there, the resistance inside the material is going to be keeps on reduce. That means for the elastic material, even though if you are holding it, for viscoelastic material, the resistance, that means the stress is going to be keeps on reducing. This is very important property. So these two tests are very important to understand whether the material is viscoelastic or linear elastic. And also here we have to follow entire what we call different theory to design them. And also while loading, it all depends whether it's a linear or hyperelastic. This all need to be understood properly. I guess covered that information for the viscoelastic and basics. Now this is the time to understand the continuum mechanics. Continuum mechanics is a very important topic nowadays. If you wanted to model, we need to understand the continuum mechanics. It's a huge subject. People are spending time, what we call their lives on this to understand or to develop the theory. Actually, what happens is, I mean, before proceeding to this, you need to understand that what is the continuum means. Continuum means if I take a volume, a material volume, and if I take a small volume on that, and if I reduce this volume to 0, the limit, this is very important. If I reduce this volume to 0, that means if it tends to the point, we should not end up with the void. This is very important. We should not end up with the void. So that means we are dealing with the materials at the large scale, at the macro scale. So that is called as a continuum. Generally, materials are not like that. At what scale you are dealing with, it depends on. Suppose if my dealing is with the structural level, my interest is at structural level, at grain size, then I have to go for the micro scale. So molecular dynamics is the subject which will give the entire information regarding the structure, grain size, how the atoms behaves, like that. If at all you are looking at the nanoscale, that means at the atomic scale, then quantum mechanics will give the entire behavior of the at the quantum level. So similarly, at the macro scale, continuum mechanics will give the insight of the behavior of the materials, behavior of what we call behavior of the materials. Only thing is you need to understand how to define these in terms of mathematics. That's what you want to be understand over here. Generally, in the continuum mechanics deals with the physical quantity. Physical quantity means you name any property which are independent of the coordinate system. This happens only in the large scale. Suppose if I take, for example, if I take a property of elasticity of a given material. Suppose if I define elasticity of a material in this particular one coordination system, if I change the coordination system, the parameters may change in defining, but the physical meaning, the physical value of that particular elastic, suppose if I take a steel, let me give a brief example so that it will be easy. Suppose if I take this steel, the Young's modulus is 2 to the power of 5, right? In terms of meter square. Clear? Suppose if I change the coordination system of that particular, defining that particular property, components may change. Components defining the Young's modulus may change, but the net value of the Young's modulus of the steel remains constant, no matter what coordinate system you look. So those physical quantities or those physical properties can be dealt in the continuum mechanics. The first thing you need to understand is it is independent of the coordination system. And one more thing is tensors. Generally we define these properties by using the tensors, and the tensor should obey the transformation law. This is very important. We cannot define tensor just like that as we wish. There are some rules need to follow to define the tensors. They need to follow transformation law. Yeah. Before proceeding, let me give what is the meaning of tensor. Already we had been dealt with this right from our childhood. We have been dealing with the vectors. We have been studying our mechanics, how these are going to, how we have been studied about force, displacement, balancing. These are all we dealt with the vectors. It is nothing but one part of the continuum mechanics. We are not new to the continuum mechanics. Right from the beginning, we have been understanding continuum mechanics, but the way we are dealing was the different. Now, in the three-dimensional space, where in general three-dimensional space, here the 3 means, actually here I have to should have put in R. R means the space what we are looking at. Generally, if we take three-dimensional space, this one, the number of components to define a tensor, the number of components, suppose a vector, if I take a vector, how many components we required? 3 components. Let me give a elementary example. For a vector, we require how many components we require? 3 components. So like that, every tensor required a minimum number of components to define them. Like that, if the number of components required to define any tensor is nothing but 3 to the power of n. N is nothing but the order of tensor which we deal with. Suppose if I say zero order means nothing but the scalar. Let me define how it is going to be. If I take the order of the vector is 0, the order of the vector is 0. So that means 3 to the power of 0, n will be 1, n equal to 1. So the number of components required to find 0 tensor is 1. It is nothing but scalar. all physical quantities which are independent of the direction. Generally, that's what we had been told. Of direction. Here only one component required to define its a property. It's nothing but the scalar. Suppose if I take the first order, the order is 1. So 3 to the power of 1 is nothing but n. Then n equal to 3. So the minimum number of components required to define vector is 3. We are all know to define a vector we require 3 components, x, y, and z component. So that's what the order of the component is required 3. If that is called as a first order tensor. And next one is the second order tensor, which is very, very important for us today in today's class. Is the second order tensor is nothing but the what we call here n must be 2. Yeah, n equal to 2. If I substitute over here, this must be correction here, n is not equal to 3. Here n must be 2. If I substitute 2 over here, the number of components is the number of components are 9. So to define a second order tensor, we require 9 components. Don't get confused with the basis. Here we required 3 bases to define a vector. That means x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. And you don't get confused with the axis over here. Axis remains same, but the basis which we define, the stress tensor requires 9 components. That I will explain what is the meaning of the stress tensor. In the next slide. Yeah, before proceeding, I would like to give a little bit to what exactly the tensor, how exactly the mathematically it looks like. Suppose we all know the dot product, we all know the behavior of the vectors, right? I don't have to, what we call go in deep of the behavior of the vectors. Suppose if I take 2 vectors, you have to bear with me these mathematics, because without understanding this, we cannot proceed. Even though it's boring, you need to be bear with me. Suppose if I take 2 vectors, if I make a product of that, I'm not defining what product it has to be for time being. I'm defining a regular product. Regular product means how many components I will get? 9 components. Remember, still the base, the axis, the coordination system is same. IJK, here also IJK, the coordination axis. This is the misinterpretation what general people used to do. If the dimension changes, the people may think the dimension changes. Dimension doesn't mean that the dimension changes. The components required to define them may change. Here the dimension is 9. Still, it doesn't mean that your space changes. Space remains 3 only. But the basis required here to define is II, IJ, IK, JK, like this, like 9 components are. If I define the product of this one as a dot product, then what happens? All we know, dot product means dot product, the product between I and I is 1. The product between IJ is 0. So that means all will be eliminating, and only one thing will be there. That is nothing but the scalar. Very simple. What is you understand? And vector product is, what we call, we know. If the product is, if I say cross product, then what's going to be that IJ is nothing but K is I. All repeating terms will go off, IA will go off, like that. Finally, we end up with a vector. If it's defined, the product between this is a dyadic product, then we end up with 9 components. It is nothing but a tensor. We would have glimpse of how the tensor is going to be. Actually, this is the basic elementary definition. This is not how we are going to be define this. Yeah. In the indical notation, this is the reference. Whatever the reference had been taken for this, the reference of what we call theory of problems of continuum mechanics from the Jordan. You can refer to this for all the information whatever I have given over here. And indical notations is also very, very, very important to understand, because when we deal with the large component, it will be very difficult to put them in a mathematically easy format. Whereas what we call, thanks to the Einstein, what we call the indical notations make us represent what notations in compact form. I would like to give you a glimpse of that, and then we'll proceed. Actually, define a tensor. We cannot use any parameter like this parameter over here. We cannot define index more than 2 times. That means we use only twice. This is physically required because we don't use physical meaning. So that means if an index, I mean, index means here the small alphabet over here. If I put an AI, we call index. Index repeats 3 times. I mean, the why it is going to be repeat 3 times means we are in 3-dimensional space. So index takes 3 points. So if I put here I equal to 1, 2, 3 is equal to A1, A2, that's how we define our vector. X component, Y component, and Z component. That's how we are defining our vectors. If I give Aij, so here also it is it's a 2 only. I repeats once, J repeats. Basic way of representing this. If you spend few minutes or few seconds over here, nothing wrong in it. So here what is Ij? So I repeats for 3, J repeats for 3. So total components will be here. 9 components will be there. I used only once, J has been used only once. If I take, say, Ijk, similarly, Ijk will take 3, 3, 3. So this repeat over here. And here you see over here, I take an I, this is out, I. So because each index has been repeated twice, this is out. I cannot take I cannot take I as 3 times. So not recommend that is not based upon our loss. So if I take I, the meaning of that is it should be summed for the repetition. Like I1, I2, I2 should be summed. So that means if the indices repeats, we call them as the dummy indices. So if the indices only once, it repeats as the only once, then I can call them as a free indices. Free indices give the order of the tensor. Very important. Free indices will give the order of the tensor. Suppose if I check over here, first of all, let me start over here. So this is AI. How many free indices over here? I. Remember, I will take only 3 values. If your dimension changes based upon the dimension, your I value takes place. So basically, we are dealing with our physical space dimension. I will take only 3 values. So here, AI. I mean, some guys, some authors may represent I cap I. I mean, it's fine. They have their own methodology of defining, but still the physical meaning is same. Now look at over here. It has been defined Aij Bj. Here, look over here. J repeats it twice. So J become a dummy indices. So the order of this one is I only. So J become dummy indices. Now the free is only 1. That's so the order of this one is going to be 1. So it's a quantity. Now look at over here. Fik. I define this one as Fik. Here K repeats. Here K repeats. Only free indices left over is I. So that means it is going to be called as first order tensor. Similarly over here, J repeats twice, K repeats twice. The order is going to be only I. Still here, it is going to be how a different components. We are going to be end up output is going to be only it's a first order tensor. For second order tensor, the Ij, we should, I mean, 2 indices, 2 frequencies, so it's going to call second order tensor. Representation based on the author, fine. Look at over here. I mean, two dummy indices are there. The free indices are J and P. Look at over here. 2 indices, J, they are dummy indices, and IK are the free indices. Second order tensor. This is how you are going to be define indices. And I'm not going to mathematics how algebra takes place with the integral notations and all. I have given just a glimpse of that. That's enough, I guess, because we have the very minimum time to understand this. Yeah, this is very important. Some authors, they are not comfortable if you say stress as a vector. Some of authors may not be comfortable if you say stress as a vector. So there is always a confusion for the order like this. There is always some confusion that whether the stress is a vector or tensor. That clarity must be there. Actually, if we are calling it as a stress is a vector. Let me define how it has to be. Suppose if I take a body, if I take a body over here, and I have been on this body, different loads have been applied. P can be a distributable, any load. We take any kind of load and any reactions, load being applied. We know how to define the stresses. Stresses in generally common sense, what we say is force divided by at elementary level of defining stresses, force per cross-sectional area. So that's how we define. Actually the defining of stress is going to be such a way that suppose if the loads are acting on a body, suppose my concentration is at any given, why we have to take on a elementary explanation is fracture is propagated on the particular. So our is at a given point. Suppose I want to find out what are the resultant force or reactional force of all applied over here on this particular point. If I want to understand this, so cut a plane to that point. So these plane directions can be infinitive. I mean, infinitive planes can cut through a point. So this plane the proper depends on the normal to that. And what plane? Suppose if I cut the plane over here, I divide into two parts. So this is going to be a part 1 and this is going to be part 2. The influence of this on this is going to be a T. This is nothing but the force of this part on this. The net force because of this part on this particular body is delta T. And if I take a cross section, because our point is our interest is a point. Suppose here, if I reduce this cross-sectional area to a G, that means if I take the ratio of force divided by area, and it limits and this area to 0, this ratio will become definite value. That is called as a stress. That's what I understand is net force or reactional force divided by area. That's what we have been told in our what we call undergraduate level. Actually, here the force is a vector. Area can be a scalar. I mean, generally area can be vector and also scalar. Generally, we take at our level we take area as a scalar only. When I want to define the area as a vector, then the normal to that area will be considered based on that inflation and all will be considered. At our level, we don't have to worry about defining the area as a vector. Still, I'm considering as a area as a scalar. So that means the ratio will give that this is a vector and this is a scalar. The net product is a vector. So the force, the stress here is a vector only. What is the meaning of stress? Yeah, fine. What is the yeah, fine. Yeah, fine. What is there? Look at over here. As we saw that means if I take a plane, I take over this is the point of interest for us. So suppose this is this is the net force has been acting because of the removed area. This point force on given point. So I can resolve this force into a two components. Either this one is through the normal or perpendicular. This gives the tensile load, and this gives us the shear load. Okay. Even necessary to be one thing. Suppose if this normal and x-axis is coincide, that's fine. There is no rule that no guarantee these two are coincide. I give force. I can resolve into the three components. One is the parallel to x-axis, parallel to y-axis, parallel to axis. So I can resolve this into the three components. Yeah, x, y, axis. So normal force and axis. I mean, axis. If the normal is coincide with the axis, then it will become that axis plane, right? Suppose if I take x-axis. So that means x-axis should coincide with the normal. Suppose if I say this one is x-axis plane, this normal should coincide with the x-axis. I have given over here. Look here, the normal is coincided with the x-axis. Now the net force. I can resolve this force into three components, right? As we know, a vector can be resolved into this into three components: normal one, shear one. So these three components will be there. Similarly, if I take a y plane, so that means we have to understand over here on an x plane. X plane means I cut at that particular point parallel to the, I mean what we call normal to the x-axis. X plane means we define based on the normal. This is the normal. X plane is nothing but normal to that particular axis. So we have three components on the x plane. Similarly, if I cut perpendicular to the y-axis, this means if I cut perpendicular to the y-axis, I will be having three components. like this. If I take this one as x-axis, if I cut this, I will be having 3 components over here. If I take the y-axis, if I cut parallel to this, I will be having 3 components over here. If I take z-axis, I will be having 3 components over here. Don't get confused with this particular box. This is not a box cube. In the small, what we call small dimension, small range, we can define this one as a box. But actually, the true thing is, all these 3 planes are like this. They are mutually perpendicular to each other. All the planes are like this. Okay. Now look at over here. On this plane, how many stresses we have? 3, right? On this plane, how many stresses are here? 3. On this plane, how many stresses are here? 3. So if we arrange them properly, let me take what is the meaning of the stresses on the x plane. On the x plane in the direction of x-axis. Sigma x means on the x plane. X plane means perpendicular to x-axis. The plane perpendicular to x-axis. On this plane, stress is parallel to the x-axis. Stress is parallel to y-axis. Stress is parallel to z-axis on the x-plane. Similarly, we can define on the x-plane, axis. On the x-plane, force parallel to x-axis, parallel to y-axis, parallel to z-axis. This is how we are going to be defined over here. Suppose, look at over here. So that means if I combine all three planes, so I will be getting 9 components. This is defined as a stress tensor. Don't confuse with the stress tensor on the vector. Stress, if you define a stress, definitely it is going to be a vector. If I combined 9 components of the 9 components stresses like this, 9 component stresses like this, definitely you will be ending with a tensor. Now, what is the advantage of this tensor? Very, very important. Suppose as I said, if you go back, I wanted to study force on any one plane, because we said like that draw planes over there, infinite number of what we call planes over there. If at all I want to draw on a particular point in a plane, if I know that normal of that point, normal of that one, if you multiply that, if you operation law, that means tensor operation. Though we cannot call it as matrix operation, we have to call this tensor operation. So that is a tensor, and if this tensor acts on that particular normal, wherever you want to put the product, these components, you can find traction on any one particular normal. You want to find out, you find out the stress and traction in the component. Mr. Stalin, hi. Is it audible now? Yeah, fine. Sorry for the disturbance. Let me. Yeah, where we are, not here. Here, fine. We are here. As I said, so that means if you want to find stresses on any particular angle, if your transformation is, you will get the component force on the pillar. This is the biggest of defined in tensor notation. There is nothing but a tensor, right? There is nothing but simple tensor operation. Tensor acting on the first unit, normal is a vector. Tensor acting on a vector, giving in a vector. Simple tensor operation. If at all you want to understand how the algebra of this means, definitely you have to go through the continuum mechanics course. A person's the people have done the basic they know all this. Yeah. Yeah. Now you understand the concept and what we call. Fine. Let me generalize. We are known the general slur. That no, if you take a material dimensional load, and here I have taken general Huxley how to how to define the tensorial operation. Now here if I take CJ, this particular, what is the order of this one? How many free indices are there? 4 free indices are there. I, J, K, E, L. So 4 indices, 4. We said, I take this to explain how the I, J, K, L. So if I take C, it is a order tensor. The fourth order tensor component is e to the power. Yeah, fine. So many, I mean, so that here signals are not properly over there. So bear with me. Where we are, yeah, we are dealing with the fourth order tensor. Fourth order tensor will be the fourth order tensor acting on the second order tensor. Here, actually, how many components over here? 9 components. 9 components can be arranged in the matrix form. For sake of mathematical simplicity, we have been arranged this tensor as a in a Y-got formation. So here 91 components, 81 components, 9 components over here. So matrix multiplication will take place. So that means C is nothing but the modulus tensor acts on strain tensor. This is the stress tensor. This is what we understand in the generalized Huxley at our advanced mechanics of solids. Suppose if the material is a homogeneous, isotropic, one-dimensional, all terms and symmetry, all terms will wind off, and we will end up with the one particular component that is nothing but C1. That one is elastic modulus. That's what we had understand in our at what we call elementary level of strength of materials. This is how the tensor mathematics. Suppose you look at over here, simple equation. That's what the advantage of the indices, indical notations. So understanding algebra of indical notation is very, very important. So when if I wanted to do research in modeling, definitely we have to go through these difficulties. Yeah. Now I guess I had given enough basic information regarding. Yeah. Now basic information regarding the stress tensor. To find out the mathematical properties. So we have to develop a constitutive equations for the materials to develop. I mean, for to behavior for the mechanical response. That's what the task is. So for that, we need to develop an equation, constitutive equations. These equations based upon the transformation law. That's what I said. I mean, our tensor needed to behave transformation laws. That's what we have been what we call looking at past 1 hour. Suppose to understand the constitutive equation, it's deformation to some particular terms, and getting this is a one subject. We cannot define everything in a given hour. Still, I'm trying what we call, I'm trying my level best to give as simple as possible. Now I am taking a body over here. Let me assume that this particular body is before applying load over here. So I can tell this one as undeformed convection, or in the reference configuration. I had applied load simulation. Now here we are no more talking with the mechanical load. So some simulation, that simulation deforms the body. Deformation theory. That's what I said. We are dealing with the deformation theory. Suppose this body is deformed. The point P comes over here, point Q, and point Q, it comes over here. So this is the initial position, reference configuration, and this is the current configuration. Current configuration comes to this particular point. If I set time means in the given time. So how the vector component of this is going to be important. Now look at over here. Here I have considered the x, nothing but the vector of this particular one. Here both axis basis of these two bodies are coincide over here. Suppose if I say I1 for this, I2 for this, and I for this. Whereas E1 for this, E2 for this, E3 for this. No guarantee bases are going to be coincide at a given point, and they are mutually orthogonal and mutually parallel. These two bases can be different. If at all these two bases are different, you need to take care of properly. So if they are at the same point, your mathematical difficulty will reduce. Yeah, fine. If at all you take over here, this point is reached over here. This is called as a deformation vector, and this point is reached over here, deformation vector. Initially, the length of this is a capital Dx, and here it became as the small dx. If I say small dx, this is in the current configuration is equal to now. This is, I can consider time is equal to 0. Of course, here time equal to 0, not necessary to be 0. It depends on our previous history. So for timing, we don't worry about that particular history and all. So here I'm considering time equal to 0. In this configuration, in this particular time, the deformation takes place. These deformation matrix are very, very. So if I gradient of this and gradient of that in the elementary meaning of the deformation, what we call partial derivation, the gradient of this is defined as the deformation gradient. This matrix is very, very important in deriving the stress equations. And left and right stretch tensor can be defined in terms of F force. This simple multiplication, but still we define it as a matrix multiplication. It's a transform in tensor. Still both are there as a matrix. I can say it as a matrix multiplication. These two tensors are very, very important. One is the I should not call them as a matrix, even though they behave as a matrix. I have to call them as a tensors. F tensor and B, that means gradient deformation, and B are very important. Even C also. Even I can define C also. C means F transpose and F. Okay. Once if you know this, so that means once again I'm repeating over here how to get F and F. So this is the X, my capital initial difference. This is one length. There are 2 points in a body in the reference configuration. Reference configuration means this is the configuration before applying the load. Once if you applied load, it has been transformed over here, and this reduced over here, and this is going to be what we call this is deforms, and this dx. So material expands. Local language I have to say it's and the gradient of this length to this length is called as the deformation gradient. And the left Cauchy-Green tensor is defined as F and F transpose. Nothing but the matrix. Yeah. Yeah, fine. Now I'm defining small x. Small x means this one. This one. X I can resolve this vector into the 3 components: X component, Y component, Z component. This is after deformation. I can deformation that X component is depends on the X. Such in lambda. Lambda already defined that original length divided by final length divided by the original length. Lambda is going to be very, very important in the defining materials. So I had defined X, defined Y. Y small x means in the current configuration. That means in deformed configuration in current time. Small y means also in the current time. So capital Y means in the reference when time is equal to 0 before applying load. I defined like this. That means we know that stretch is equal to this. So what is the F matrix? Differentiation of this with respect to capital X. If I differentiate, it's a partial differentiation. differentiate this over here, differentiate with respect to y1, no component is at 0, 0. So that means if I define over here, this will end up with this particular matrix. This is for uniaxial tension. One more thing here is that for the incompressible materials, I didn't define over here, but for the most probably our materials are incompressible materials. For incompressible materials, the Jacobian, the determination of this must be 1. The determination of this must be 1. That satisfies the incompressible material. And from here we can define this. What makes us to define this one is, I mean, if I take a simple uniaxial load, if I apply load in this direction, stretch will be there. In the x direction, no other force will be there. So all other force components will be there. But still, even if I apply load in the x direction, deformation will be there in the lateral direction. Suppose if I take a body, if I apply in this direction, stretch will be there in this direction. Still, deformation will be there in other direction. Those deformation can be equal or may not be equal. If I take a simple isotope, simple homogeneous material, the deformation will be same. So that means this is the stretch in x direction. This is the stretch in y direction. This is the stretch in direction. Remember, we are applying only load in one direction. So all other deformations will be 0. No shear load will be there. So all other deformations will be 0. So the determination of this must be 1 for the incompressible materials. Based upon this, I can define x, y. It's a simple common sense. I mean, for simple here, you can define your own. For a combination of shear and tense, I mean, extension, you can define your own displacement function. I repeat once again here. This condition, this condition is in the initial condition where before applying simple term for applying load, Generally, I should not talk about that. I have to say that this one is in the reference configuration at time equal to 0. This is in the current configuration when time equal to t when load applied. Okay, so this has been transformed to point. So this is the displacement function, how it has been expanded in the current configuration. From this I can get F, and from this I can get B. B is nothing but F transpose. I hope up to here it's clear. Yeah, fine. Stress tensor. I mean, this is, I mean, because we are been developing these equations will be developed based upon balance laws and thermodynamics. So up to now, no balance law is violated and thermodynamics laws are violated. So that means whatever, I mean, whatever the material, those obeys those balance laws and thermodynamics definitely should obey these formulas. But how we are going to approach, how we are going to utilize that is going to depends upon energy functions. And finally, based upon balance laws and thermodynamics, we can define stress tensor, what we call, I mean, Cauchy stress components. That means diagonal components, principal components. What I have to say is that principal components, x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. I can define like this, where psi is nothing but strain energy function. This is important. Depends on strain energy function. This is what finally we can define. Is nothing but the Lagrangian multiplier, which what we call compromise, I mean, which conforms with the incompressibility. I said material must be incompressible. Here, material volume should not change. If you compress means what we call shape may change, volume shape may change, but net volume should not decrease. That's what the simple electrical meaning of incompressibility. Of course, incompressibility is a big subject where you need to understand so many. At meaning, I can do that. Yeah, fine. So that means once if you define this pi can be function of stretch. Already defined stretch, right? This stretch can be function of stretch invariance. One more point I have to define here is invariance. Invariance means no matter that matrix, if you transform into different coordinates, the invariance will not change. The invariance will remain same. So that means that what your matrix parameter. So that's why invariance will change no matter what. So that means it is independent of the system. If you define your pi as a function of stress, I mean as a function of invariance. Some guys will define in terms of the invariance, and some authors define in terms of stretch. And finally, the force will be defined as for M component T is this T tensor and F is F already calculated. F is normal on which we want to calculate that force, and normal must be reference configuration. We have to be cautious what configuration and A can be taken as a vector or a scalar. Generally, we take as a scalar over here. And finally, force can be, this is the force equation. Outcome of this slide is equation, and once if I know the strain energy function in terms of the lambda, then I can calculate stress, and I can calculate once if I know stress components, principal components, then I can calculate force components in that particular direction. Now it comes to the modeling. Yeah, as I said, so as I said, we are going to deal with the modeling. We had given glimpse of how an equation is going to be takes place. Let me proceed simple linear elastic material. So we are all know, I mean, the simple thing is proportional to strain. I have to find out the slope of this particular line, this particular thing that will give the elastic material. This is what we've done in our undergraduate level. Same problem we are trying to solve with the numerical method. So why I have taken this one is so that you will understand, this formula. So we can understand how we are using the coding. Same concept, you can use same coding, you can use no matter. Only thing is you have to change the force and formulas. And if you refer to any standard textbook on computer mechanics or linear velocity, you can find, I mean, hypervelocity material, you can find the wide variety of force. And you can develop your own formula based upon your material response. As I said, the materials are behaving in a different manner. You can develop your own material formulas when the response it takes place. So I would like to explain this particular thing by using the numerical method. I have taken some material. I have taken force. This is the force and corresponding deformation. Corresponding deformation I had drawn. So force and deformation is not the strain. Remember, deformation only. That how much the change of length. Simply speaking, I can say it's a change of length. The force and deformation. The graph suggests me that it's a simply linear elastic. I don't know what it is going to be. That graph says that it's a simply a linear elastic material. Linear elastic material, I can use our simple linear elastic material formulas. So how a numerical method can be used over here is, so what the information I know here is, I have taken applied so I calculated force and versus deformation. Nothing, you don't have to worry about that. Take a material, take any rubber, hold over here, add the spring load over here. The spring balance, or add the load over here, take a spring balance. You can conduct your own experiments and you can publish papers on this. You take any material, hook over here and try to measure deformation. Add 100 grams. Or if at all, if you take a simple rubber, which is elastic, which is a very simple material, so you can add in grams also. You can find weights. You don't have to refer for the instruments to do this simple experiment. Do this simple tensile load and calculate the force and deformation thing and plot this, and you can understand how they behave. If it is not linear, then I cannot use the linear elastic form. That means Hooke's law I cannot use. I have to use the hyperelastic material, and I will tell you the hyperelastic material in the later slides. So that means what is the information I have? This is the applied force, and this is the corresponding deformation. So this I am going to consider experimental load and experimental deformation. Okay. So I have experimental load, experimental deformation. Now look at over. Now conceptual definition of force. That means elemental. One-dimensional. A and A length is known as. So here the task is to find out Young's modulus. Okay. Now assume this value, any initial value that can be 1 or 0. 0 means it will vanish. So you have to define a particular value. You assume any one value. So I had assumed say 1000. Let me assume 1000. and calculate force. Suppose if this is now corresponding deformation is now corresponding. So one value corresponding deformation is now corresponding deformation is this one. This is now substitute over here and calculate force. This we are assuming this Young's modulus as 100. Calculate force. Now I'm using least square method. Least square. This value to the original value, then this force must be equal to experimental force. That's what the common sense is, right? Repeat. Once again, I'm repeating. So these are all known to us. I'm assuming Young's modulus. If my assumption is near to its original Young's modulus value, then my calculated force must be experimental force. So the difference I'm going to call it as error. Between now I'm utilizing the least square method so that if any, I'm using the least square method to define an error. So I define an error based upon the experiment and calculated. And I had taken test n is equal to nothing but the number of steps. Here, how many steps? 24 loadings are the total. N means number of steps. N means here number of data points. Here we have 24. So n is nothing but 24. And I can take either or it can of error. Now I have to minimize this error. Once this error is minimized, F calculation will approach. My E value is going to be absolutely right. So I have to change UV value that keeps on. So anyhow, we have in MATLAB, we have what user defined function to minimize this by if at all you are not using the MATLAB, genetic algorithm is a wide accepted. I mean, any code in platform, you can use the genetic algorithm. Genetic algorithm is the best thing to use. I mean, here, one thing I would like to differ here in the MATLAB, search or fmincon will give the local local minima. Local minima, how to define means, suppose if at all we are having a graph like this. Let me tell the difference. Well, let me repeat once again. So up to now we have defined the error function. Now the task is to minimize this error function. To minimize this using the MATLAB. So MATLAB is what have a defined functions that is called as fmincon, fmin search, and genetic algorithm. Genetic algorithm can be in programming platform, can be MATLAB, Mathematica, or even you can use in what we call console. So let me give the difference between the fmincon and genetic algorithm. Suppose my graph is like this. Suppose my graph is like this. Here, look at over here. This is local minimum. This minimum over here because my slope of this line keeps on decreasing over here and is changed over here. So that means here my slope of line is going to be 0. But still it is not global minimum. Global minimum is somewhere over here. Our F minimum search will give this minimum. So you have to identify whether it's a, suppose if at all your curve is like this, you don't have to bother about that. So only one minimum. If your curve is like this, then you have to worry about the local minimum or maximum, what we call global minimum. So your genetic algorithm will give directly to the global, what we call global maximum. It will do the certain what we call iterations, and we will take a minimum one. That's what the difference between the fmin search and genetic algorithm. As long as your curve is like this, you don't have to worry about this local minimum and global minimum. Yeah, fine. The task is here this error function, and we can use fmincon or fmin search and genetic algorithm and minimize this and obtain eval. Whatever eval you will get it, that is going to be your I would like to. Yeah, fine. It's working. Yeah, this is what. Yeah, now this is what I had given code in the MATLAB. I can share this code with you guys. Those who are related, code is same, but only thing is you have to change the formulas. I mean, you can use your own code. It is not like that you have to think. See this one only. So clear. Now look over here. What I said, we have to assume initial here instead of A, yeah, what we call instead of E, I define it as a A. Yes, I have given some constant. So this constant I define as the initial value as A, 100, 1000, 10,000. So I defined some function at LEE. What this function gives is, it will, this is what the function is. Function, I named it as error. Okay. A take as A means it take as input of A. Input means here 10,000. This will take that input, and I define diameter of the material what I had been taking that material. So calculate area. I know the length of that particular work sample, and S is nothing but number of samples. We had been defining the formula. N is nothing but number of samples, right? I define S as the number of samples, and I taken in steps. So I defined deformation and R from the experimental data. I gathered this one from the, I called these values from the experimental data, and I had calculated error. Initial error I had assumed as a 0. Initial error I assumed as a 0. Initial force I had assumed initial first force as 0, because when there is no deformation, your force also must be 0. This is a stretch. As I said, we are dealing with the stretch. Deformation stretch I have been explained. So initial stretch is equal to, when stretch is equal to 1, that means change of, I mean, final length to original length. When both lengths are same, our deformation is going to be 1. So when initial stretch is 1, your force is going to be 0. That's what requires. So I had taken, these are defined the initial point, and I had taken from the second point. And T is equal to defined, I had defined all the forces. So these calculated forces depends on my initial value. What is the initial value over here? 10,000. So based upon this initial value, this is going to be, I am going to calculate forces for corresponding all deformations. Corresponding experimental deformation, I calculated all the forces. Now the difference between the calculated force and the experimental force, the FR is nothing but experimental, FRC nothing but calculated. The difference between is nothing but the error. And I had minimized that based upon the, I mean, least square method. I had said minimize the error function over here. Initial error function I had assumed as the 0. When there is no load, error must be 0. So first term I had taken as 0, so I had taken from second term. So total error function has been taken, and I had taken 100 as it is going to minimum value, I mean small value. So I had taken a percentage. If you take percentage or actual, there is no difference. So I had taken it as a percentage, and I minimized. So this is my ERR. So this function will give me output as a ERR. This is simple code, sir. You don't have to worry about the programming and all. Try to understand the logical thing, and you can use Excel also to solve this. Use your own platform. Try to understand the code. And as I said, this class is for the basic students, those who are who wanted to do solve the, I mean, nonlinear evolution materials. So for them, I have taken. So this code we never get unless I mean people are ready to share. We'll be getting this code. Getting code will be very difficult. Yeah, fine. Now I said, we from this function we'll get the error. Now I had used here, I mean I came up to my program. So function means once I call this function, it will call this error. So I mean I've given, I mean this is the upper bound, yeah, lower limit, and change the limit. So I had used either GA function, this is the default. If you Google it, it will give entire information. Or if you go to the MATLAB what we call workbook, it will give entire information over here. I had used GA, fminCon, fminsearch, and I had calculated yes. Yes means here it will give the optimized value for the A. Yes means after minimizing, as I said, local minimum, global minimum. As I said, optimized, and it will give the yes value as of A, because whatever the A is assumed over here, for that value it will give the optimized value. Now this, my A will become the optimized value of that. And I once again I calculated by now calculated. Now the optimized value I used once again. I had calculated and plotted over. These are all simple. I recalled once again the data and same formulas I used, calculated and plotted the graphs between the calculated and observed. And this is what my case. So that means my graphs almost all my the model my model is almost all representing my experimental one. So that means my code is working. So that means we have to understand, first of all, for the whenever you develop a code, the section is this coding. So I had been given input to do this and give that input to you. I mean, what it has told me is, whenever you are developing code, check your code with the known values, known experimental data, known thing. Suppose if it is that is, and what we call replicating your known parameters, that means one thing we can conclude that our code is right. It doesn't mean that if your code is right, your entire program is going to be right. I mean, you are going to get the actual result. I mean, actual experiment. I mean, you are mimics the experimental data, because it's going to depend on a lot of factors. At least at the initial stage, you can figure it out that your code is right. So here I decided that my code is right based on known experimental data. Yeah, this is what the linear elastic material. Now I would like to, yeah, half an hour is there for us. Yeah, it is a good enough time for us. So now I would like to define the hyperelastic material. As we know that, I defined that hyperelastic material means relation between stress and strain should not be linear. We have variety of models are there. Even you can develop your own model. You can get complicated. That's what people says that, because you have to, I mean, study so many inequalities. Those are all things need to be developed. So the task is here. I mean, the basic hyperelastic models are Neo-Euclidean, very standard model; Moore-Revelian, very standard; Ogden, well-known; exponential function can be useful. I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to tell how these four models are going to be takes place. I said your stress energy. Yeah, I said this equation, right? Your stress components will give based upon this formula, based upon pi. If you define this pi, you will get your stress component based upon your input function. Input function here is the lambda. I'm going to define my, I mean, what we call Cauchy stress function based upon my lambda. Some guys, as I said, some authors will define Cauchy stress, I mean, this strain energy function in the invariance of F matrix and B matrix. Depends on. And the P is known, Lagrange multiplier, which compensates which takes care of the compressibility. So suppose if I take uniaxial loading, so my loading is in one dimension. Suppose what was that? If suppose if I take a body like this, so if I apply load, so my load is simple uniaxial load. Okay, my uniaxial load. So there is no load in this direction, no load in other direction, no load in this direction, no load in other direction. So that means all other loads are zero. So all other directions are zeros. So that means, so Txx will be known value, Tyy, T stress in the y direction will be 0. So I put the 0 value over here, and I will define over here, and I can get Lagrangian multiplier. That to obtain the Lagrangian multiplier in wherever the direction load is not there, put that over in this equation and get this Lagrangian multiplier. And once if you know the stress components, and substitute over here in the force equation, and you will get force component. Now we are going to be different models will use different pi function, energy function. Now we are going to look at how all these are going to be. Okay. Yeah. Now look this. I'm taking simply Ogden model. I'm going to a simple Ogden model. Ogden model energy function is defined. If you closely observe, this represents nothing but a strain energy. These are Young's model. Mu and alpha are Young's modulus. Strain stretch is not going to have any unit because the length of length, and your Young's modulus is going to give this mu p is nothing but the I mean we cannot call it Young's modulus. What we call, they call it a Ogden parameters. Suppose if I take n equal to 3. Suppose if I n equal to 3, repeating this. Alpha 1, mu 1, mu 2, similarly alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3. If I take n equal to 4, based upon that, the complexity of strain energy function will take place. So if experiments says that n equal to 3 will give the optimum value for all hyperelastic material. So I had taken n equal to 3. And once you know these parameters, these Ogden parameters, so your shear modulus can be defined. Yeah. So as I said, so this is the mu alpha. So based upon, as I said, these are all there. So once if you know these Ogden material parameters, you can calculate shear modulus. So here, certain constraints need to be understood. I mean, need to be valued over here. Look at over here. This constraint Hill's inequality need to be satisfied. That means all your material properties cannot be 0. Your material properties should not be negative. So that compressible, that particular standards, the product of this must be greater than 0. This is the physical meaning. Or this is our mathematical meaning. The physical meaning says this one is, suppose if UI in exact in one direction, the meaning is the stretch should be more in the applied direction. The stretch should not be more in the other direction. That's what's the inequality. So that means while you are developing the model, you have to keep, I mean, Hill's criteria and also Becker's criteria. There are certain criteria which you need to be keep in mind. So once if you know solve this, then I can, once if I know the stress energy, this phi energy, I can substitute this in this equation. I get the stress equation. That's what. Substitute pi function over here and get the stress equation in this. Stress equation now completely stress equation in terms of lambda and constants. So I have taken n equal to 3. So here, how many constants I'm going to get? Alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3, mu 1, mu 2, mu 3. So that is 3, total 6 parameters I have to get from this model, from this stress. So I mean, p value I calculated because I have applied the uniaxial load. So P Lagrange multiplier is calculated based upon Tyy equal to 0. Why I am substituting Tyy is nothing but I had taken Tyy as 0. I mean, not applying any what we call load in the y direction. So substitute over there, get the p value, and finally we'll get the stress over here, and finally we will get calculated load. So corresponding stress, you will get corresponding F value. Stress will be calculated based upon this. And initially assume these values, same numerical method what we followed for the linear elastic material, same numerical method need to be followed. Instead of stress formula, force formula, instead of Young's modulus divided by, I mean, EA by L. Now this is your stress force formula. That's all. If you know this, then programming coding is same coding. Yeah, Neo-Hawkian material. Here, in the Ogden model, they had used lambda. They had used your energy function in the stretches. In the Neo-Hawkian model, they had used invariance. Of course, finally, your invariance also comes to F matrix is nothing but B matrix is nothing but F transpose. F depends on lambda only. So that means obviously your B also depends on the lambda. Finally, you will end up with the stretch on. No matter whether your energy function on invariance or the, finally you will end up with the stretch equation. While you are defining, I had explained this, right? So if you take pi value as a function of B, your stress equation will be like this. Your stress tensor. I said stress tensor will be derived based upon balance loss. So finally, this is what stress equation. And finally, you can calculate force. Similarly, you can calculate same formula. Yeah, this is the Moon-Rivlin model. Energy function is this. In the Moon-Rivlin also assumed potential energy function in terms of I1 and I2. The difference between the exponent, Hookean and this one is, in Hookean, he used only one invariant. Here he used two invariants. Already, invariance of a matrix is not going to be changed no matter in what coordination system you use. If it is transformed, if you transform that particular tensor to any coordination, your invariants are going to be constant. That's why always remember energy function must be either in stretch or in the invariance, principal invariance. You have to remember. Yeah, fine. In the principal invariance, you have to be, it has to be. Once I find pi value, and it will be, and your stress can be defined. Similar thing, substitute here and do this, and finally your stress equation is, and from this you can calculate force. Similarly, P can be calculated because we are applying unidirectional load. If at all you are applying two-dimensional biaxial load, you cannot apply y equal to 0. You can apply z equal to 0. If you take triaxial load, then you cannot take z-axis. Then if you want to calculate t, then you can take the stress components. You can play along with. Once if you get into the subject, you can appreciate the beauty of the subject, beauty of the mathematics, what we call. Yeah, fine. So finally, the final equation is this. And exponential energy function. Exponential energy function, it's beautiful. It is perfectly suits the what we call, I mean, that exponential says that exponential curve. It suits the hyperelastic material. But the difficulty is, I mean, certain criteria will not going to satisfy. I mean, exponential energy function, because exponential curve, I mean, as we said, the materials, I mean, the loss need to be satisfied. This is not going to be satisfied certain loss. Of course, within our constraint, within our domain, it is acceptable. A final stress is going to be this. This is the work stress equation. Now I plotted, I had taken, we mimicked, and this is the experimental data. What we had done is, we wanted, as I said, we wanted to find out the, I mean, breast cancer using the mechanical means. We have to model. We cannot conduct experiments in a real life, because conducting experiments on breast is going to be very, very difficult. So what we have done is, we want to mimic a material which replicates the breast. So we got some experimental data. I mean, nowadays it will be ethical. I mean, we have to follow all ethical rules. It will be difficult to get the information. So we had, luckily, we got one experimental data for the load and deformation for the tissue. Okay. Now we mimicked the material like the polymer. We developed a material and we had fabricated it. And I had used all the models: Ogden model, exponential model, Euclidean model, and what we call Mooney-Rivera model. All models I used, and I plotted. This is what I reached finally. So it shows that exponential model is almost all matches. Of course, we are not interested beyond a deformation. We are not interested beyond a certain deformation. So within my deformation, say within 10% of deformation, it absolutely accepts. All three formulas are accepts. So beyond the deformation keeps on. I mean, for the large deformation, this deformation is there. That can be taken care. If I tune it, it will be managed. This is how our modeling takes place. Now, I guess you would have understand, you would have appreciate the benefits of the modeling. Here, I cannot use our regular linear theory. That's what the final outcome is. We use our own thing. Suppose if the behavior is like this, assume that my material, this is very simple, right? Here, the material behavior is like this, very simple. So I had used this one. Suppose assume that my material behavior is like this. Then I cannot use the hyperelastic material modeling over here. I have to define my own model over here. So that means the behavior here we have to decide based upon trends. So modeling, the capability of the modeling is, yeah, this is what the thing is. One second, yeah. I guess I covered good enough what we call knowledge on experiment, what we call this one, modeling and all. And I mean, most of our, it has been told me that because I was also faculty member over here. Before going to the research, I was a faculty member. Before going to the IIT, I was not known to all these factors. Even I was not known how to do the literature survey. So I've been asked to give little bit how to do a literature survey. If all we are not access to the what we call journals. That's what I've been. I would like to talk how to do a literature survey for a few minutes. Generally, what is the main important for the what we call importance of the literature survey is two things. We have to know what are the approaches what the approaches been used previously and what are the gaps. This is what we have to understand over here, and based upon things. And also one thing we have to remember is we should not, what we call we should avoid the duplication. Even unintentional duplication is also not recommendable. So I have some other factors are there. I have given these three factors. Because of, by keeping this, we have to do the literature survey properly. So there are three steps there are several ways of doing literature survey. Basic thing I'm giving. keyword is based upon the keywords. Suppose hyperelastic material. Type in search an hyperelastic material. Search manually what is the hyperelastic material and how it is going to be, whether it's a linear elastic, how it is going to be, whether it's a time dependent, how it is going to be. You do it by manually, word by word. Second thing is backward chronicle research. Backward chronicle search. This is very, very important. Suppose if you find any one journal, if you get a one journal, look at the reference. Suppose you are not understanding anything in that particular journal, go to the references to whom it has been referred. So in the references, we will be finding the journals. So try to refer them. So that means once you are going to the references, you are trying to develop a theory over on a given journal, given paper. Suppose they wanted to take the hyperelastic material. So Ogden has been given hyperelastic material. So nowadays people are being given so many, so many models on the hyperelastic material. Take one paper and look at the references. So they have been giving references, and if you refer to the references, you will be having entire basic research. And if you want to go forward chronicle search, what it says that, and if you how many citations, what are overall the cited that paper. So if you take reference paper, overall cited that paper will give the latest information in that particular subject. So if you want to approach to the forward means, you have to go for the citation. These two methods are very, very important in doing the literature survey. And studying entire paper is going to be very difficult. Initially, you have to do, while doing the literature, first read the abstract and the result. Once if you feel that is in your domain, in your what we call area of interest, then only go through the paper and solve entire paper properly. And this is what they are given the Scopus with my with my login I got over here. If you come over here, it will based upon what it is, based upon citation or based upon the newest, based upon the old, last cited. Here we see this is 100 based upon years. So like this, we can get new cited values. Yeah, and these are all not necessary. The major important task is where the resources material is going to be. Yeah, fine. Generally in IIT, we do Scopus, Web Science, because they are all a page. So if everybody cannot be accessible for this, I'm going to give those who are not accessible to all this, how to do a literature survey. Of course, these are all pirated. We cannot use this. We cannot recommend this, but still for education purpose, I'm sharing my view. I'm not going to use this, but I'm sharing the way. Of course, once if you don't have any other methods, in advantage of the technology, right? Yeah, fine. So Google Scholar, you type in a Google Scholar any word, you will get that, and you will end up with the different what we call titles, and you take that title and substitute in the Sci-Hub, and you will get these papers. These two are very, very important. Those who are unable to access to the Scopus, Science Direct or Web Science, these two are very, very important, very, very simple. Type in Google Scholar. This is the website. And suppose in Google Scholar you type hyperelastic, you will get number of papers, and take that paper title and substitute and paste in the Sci-Hub. Sci-Hub is Russian-based Kazakhstan. I guess it's Kazakhstan. One person of Kazakhstan basically is the Russian-based, and they didn't put any. What we call. They said that education is free for everybody. I don't. Somehow they pass the paywalls that will be required to how they understand. So these two you can use, and you can get number of papers as you like. Yeah. With this, I guess yeah. With this, and any inquiries, any questions, acceptable. Any comments, any suggestions, any comments, any questions? Now I'm ready to take. Hi, sir. Hello. Sir, Stalin, sir, are you there? Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm in the line, sir.
Sir, thank you, sir,
Yes, sir. Fine,
for
sir.
your wonderful session.
Yes,
So
sir.
all the participants are requested
Yeah.
to post your questions, which you want to get the clarification from our resource person. please post your questions.
Or,
This is
or
a
even if it is not available over here, they can contact me through my mail, so that you can share my mail ID to them. They can
Okay,
contact
sir.
me. I can give the I can give information, whatever the information they require.
Sure, sir. Definitely, sir.
Yes, sir. Any suggestions, if at all they want to be, if at all any clarification, I can. How it's any questions? Hi. Is it audible, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
There is
Sir.
one question from the participant. What is the
Fine,
difference
fine, sir.
between
Welcome,
stress
sir.
vector and stress tensor?
Yeah, exactly. Right, right. You see, it's very simple. If I call it as a stress, force per cross-section area, I showed in that. What was that? Yeah. Is it still it is sharing, right? Yeah, fine. Look at over here. So as I said, if at all we want to calculate reactional force at a given point, that's what the stress means for us, right? Suppose if you apply a load on entire body, my interest is on a given point, right? So if I want to calculate entire reaction at that particular point, it's nothing but distribution of force on that particular point. That is called as a stress. General people will call it as a traction. In what we call in the continuum family, people will call it as a traction. We call it as a stress. Don't get confused with the stress tensor. Stress tensor, this force. So this is one plane. I can get three planes, three mutual perpendicular planes like this. Three mutual perpendicular plane like this. Suppose if I take a body, where is that draw? Suppose if I take a body, number of loads have been applied on this. Okay. Suppose I want to calculate on this particular body, on this particular point. Now this is the x-plane, right? This is x-plane. This is x-plane because this is perpendicular to x-axis. All these forces are resolved onto this plane, right? This difference are there. X-axis, Y-axis, all these forces can be resolved into this. Now, how many stress are there? This is the normal stress, this is the shear stress, and this is the shear stress. These three components of shear stress are there. This is the stress. This is the stress. This particular component is stress. Okay. Now combining on three, how many components are 9 components? All these 9 components, if I arrange in a matrix form, that is called as a stress tensor. I hope you understand difference between the stress component, what we call stress vector, and this is called as a stress vector. Not I don't call this stress vector. It is a scalar, that particular point on the vector. Okay. Yeah. I hope you understand. Now this particular stress tensor will be used to calculate force, traction force on any plane. Traction force on any plane, I want it to be. So only thing is I should know the normal to that plane. Suppose if this is the plane, and if I have normal to that plane, substitute this normal over here, and what we call multiply with this. If I know these 9 components of stresses, substitute over here, find the normal, you will find the traction. Combining of traction is nothing but stress. I hope it's clear.
Yes.
Hello? Yes, sir. Any other questions, sir?
Yes, sir. There is another question.
Yes. Sir.
Which method is best suitable for solving the equation
Yeah.
arranged in matrix form?
Matrix form, we don't deal with the matrix form. Finally, no, eigenvectors, what we call. Here in the continuum mechanics, 1 second, sir. Finally, you will end up with the algebraic equation only. Clear? No matter what matrix it is, finally you have to end up with the algebraic. Newton-Raphson method is the best method. Finally, you have to deal with the alternate linear set of linear equations. No matter whether it's a matrix, whether it's a matrix with the 3-dimensional or n-dimensional, finally you end up with linear equation. Suppose look at over here, sir. Yeah. Here itself. Now this is the matrix. Okay. This is the matrix. And finally, what I'm going to do is multiplication of this with this, and I will end up with 3 simultaneous equation. I have to worry about how I have to solve this simultaneous equation. That's all. You don't have to worry about the matrix, how to solve the matrix. You have to worry about how to solve the simultaneous equation. We have wide variety of answer method, ORCAM method, Rajaputta method is the best way. Yeah. I hope he understands the answer. Sir, if at all it is the matrix, of course, I'm telling with my knowledge, in my knowledge of solving my, what we call, if at all you talk about the vibrations, and there are different criteria. They solve differently. So in my knowledge, in the, modeling part, you don't have to worry about matrix. You have to, no matter how matrix is, you have to end up with the normal equations only. Simultaneous equation. Method. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions, sir?
Okay. So now we will request
Sir.
Professor PMJ Stalin to propose vote of thanks.
So it's my privilege to propose vote of thanks on this wonderful occasion. So first of all, on behalf of management and director sir and principal sir and participants and on my behalf, I would like thanks to our distinguished resource person of today's function, Professor S. Narasimha Rao, Senior Associate Professor, IIT Madras, for his valuable lecture on mathematical model for mechanical response of nonlinear elastic material. So really, all the participants really enjoyed for this wonderful section. I thank you, sir, for this wonderful lecture. Thank you, sir. I may like to express my sincere gratitude to our chairman, sir, Vengi Panchalaya Garu, and young and dynamic director, Mohan Garu, and our principal, respected, beloved principal, Dr. Sesai Garu, and heads of various departments for their continuous support to organize such a event. Thank you, sir. I also wish to express my sincere gratitude to our technical team, especially our CSC HOD Varaprasad sir and Sarma sir and his team, our department faculty, for their support to organize such type of event. Thank you, sir. I'm also very much grateful to our participants. So without our participants, we cannot conduct such type of event in the grand success. Once again, I thanks to all the participants spending their valuable time with us. Thank you, all the participants. Thank you, sir. And one more thing, all the participants, you will get the e-certificate, the registered mail ID within today evening. Thank you to all. Once again, thank you to all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Stalin Garu. Thank you, Professor Narasimha Rao Garu.
Yes, sir.
Lot of effort.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here in the tough time, and we are being what we call it for your patience, for the patience of audience listening very what we call smoothly. Thank you. And if at all you guys have any doubt, you can share me. Sir, sir, you can share my mail ID to all of them. They can ask any question, any queries. Are there any help is required? We are ready to help. Yeah.
I request all the participants, if you have any doubts regarding this subject, you can send by mail. We will respond at the earlier. Thank you once again to all the participants, and who has taken a lot of pain in delivering this lecture. The management and the entire department is are telling you that you have given an excellent lecture on material, particularly the biomedical engineering related one, and alternate materials and the properties. In general, the mechanical properties of the materials will be tested in the laboratory, and we can come to a conclusion that particular material will be useful to a particular application. When it comes to the some of the materials, we may not able to test in the laboratory by using the equipment. In that case, mathematical modeling is one of the best options to get almost 99% accuracy. With that, we can utilize those materials wherever we can apply. As far as engineering is concerned or medical applications are concerned. I hope this session is useful to the research community. Further, the CSE department, who is hosting this program, on behalf of the department, I have to say thanks to them who have involved directly and indirectly. Thank you once again. Varaprasad Garu,
Sir.
Shall we conclude?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you give any concluding remarks?
No, sir. Nothing, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This session will be ended now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.